Hello, I'm Michael Cobb, President of the Arkansas Jazz Heritage Foundation. I've just presented Mr. Gary Meggs his plaque commemorating his 2020 induction into the Arkansas Jazz Hall of Fame. Now, I know of you, Gary. I know from standing on lawns in the summer and the fall and listening to music, but I didn't know a whole lot about the details of your life.
Right.
So on this occasion, we want to kind of get to know you. I want to get to know you a little better, and for those that are watching, give them a chance to find out more about you.
Sure.
Because jazz celebrities come in all different flavors. They walk in all sorts of circumstances. Some are world travelers, some get a lot of publicity, some operate behind the scenes, some play in nightclubs, some are in education, some don't even play music, but they do so much to promote the world of jazz and our knowledge of it that they have a place in the Jazz Hall of Fame. Gary, you punched the ticket on several of those things. As a performer, as someone who has rubbed shoulders with worldwide celebrities, as someone who has worked the gigs probably a few times, more than you care to remember, but also as an educator. And it is in that role of educator that I think you have really blossomed. So I want to kind of talk about your life, or have you talk about it, and take us from that time. I see from your resume you were born in El Dorado. I go to El Dorado every year to do some work. I did not in the past year,
Right.
but I plan to again, and I've come to enjoy it, walk around the square, and a lot of people who accomplished a lot came from El Dorado, so I was really fascinated to see that happen. And when I look at when you were born and what was happening with your life, you had the opportunity at that time and at that location for a whole lot of musical influences to come at you from all sorts of direction. And maybe as an onlooker, the last I would have thought might have been jazz. But maybe take us back to that time in El Dorado where there might have been a turning point or whatever.
Well, I was very blessed. I lived at El Dorado in a great time of history.
Yeah.
The town was, I think, the fifth or sixth largest city in Arkansas at that time. And,
Yeah.
I started taking piano lessons at a young age, and my mother, when everybody was out playing ball, my mother was saying, "Sit down on the piano bench. You're going to practice, boy." And so I did, and got in the 6th grade, and I wanted to be in the band, really bad. Ever since, I always wanted to play a horn. My dad was a saxophone player as a hobby, and so when I got in the 6th grade, we had a band director named Bill Craig, who is very instrumental in a lot of things.
I knew Bill Craig.
Yes, and he started me on the saxophone, and actually started me on the trumpet, but we were poor, and at the end of the 6-week rental period, my dad said, "Look, if you're going to be in the band, you're going to have to play my old saxophone because I can't afford this trumpet." And so Mr. Craig, he was a great saxophone player.
Yeah.
And he loved jazz, so he was talking about jazz before I even knew what jazz was. So he kind of set the bug in my ear.
Okay.
The huge turning point for me for jazz, though, was when I was a senior in high school, El Dorado High School. I was getting ready to go to basic training at Fort Pope. And I mean, I was going, there wasn't any question. But right before I graduated high school, my band director, Hal Cooper, who is a retired band director from Arkansas Tech, I didn't know it at the time, but he was also a great jazz guy too. He was a bass player. And he told us, he said, "Okay guys, let's go. We're going down to the little theater. We're going to have a performance today." And so we thought, okay, it's a few days from graduation, let's go. And so we went down, and the Henderson State University Jazz Band was there. And Earl Hesse had just taken the job as the saxophone player. And I kid you not, this was the turning point in my life. The band was playing, and I thought, well, that's pretty good, that's great. And then all of a sudden, Earl Hesse stood up, and he played this solo that I'd never heard anything like that in my whole life. And it was just like that.
Yeah.
The light went on. I said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. That's it. So, make a long story short, saw him play. He offered me a scholarship. I said, well, I've got to go to the service first. So a week later, I was on a bus to Fort Pope.
Oh my goodness.
But the bug was still there. So when I got out of the service, I came back home. I was working my daddy had a little motorcycle shop. I was back there working in the shop, and I said, Dad. He said, yeah, what's up? I said, I need to go to college. He said, well, what are you waiting for? So I picked up the phone, and I called Dr. Hesse. And he said, yeah, come on. I still got the scholarship for you. So I got there, and of course there was 3 jazz bands at Henderson at that time.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have all those jazz bands anymore, but Wendell Evanson was the director, and he had built those jazz bands up, and Dr. Hesse had taken over. And I was so blessed I got started with that, and I ended up in Dr. Hesse's top jazz band. I spent 4 years with him traveling and touring. We won Jazz Festival in Memphis, and I won the Outstanding Jazz Soloist Award of the Day, which is a huge deal for me. I didn't realize it was a huge deal, but it was. Yeah. And then when we got back, it was time for graduation, and I had an offer for a jazz assistantship at Arkansas State University. At that time, I believe it was called IAJE, was the big jazz thing then. Yeah. And the president of the IAJE was one of the judges at that Memphis contest, and he was running the jazz band at Arkansas State. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know what it is. I'm a pretty religious guy, very spiritual, I should say. Yeah. And so I had 2 choices. I could either go take that assistantship, or I could go to Texas and take a band directing job. And I chose, I can't believe it, but I chose the band directing job. I did. And I don't know if you remember a guy named Jerry Lowell, but he was huge in East Texas, a really great trombone player, good friends with Bill Watrous, and a good friend of Doc Severance's.
Oh, wow.
And so Jerry Lovell owned a company called Lovell Music Company. And so he drove up to Arkadelphia and found me and told me if I would take this job in Texas, he would take care of me and make sure I got to play all I wanted to. Oh. So I took that job in Texas, and while I was teaching in Texas, I ended up in his big band. We played all the time. I met a lot of good people then too, and everybody in that band was really great at that time. Really older guys like us now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
which sax, tenor, alto?
Well, you know, my favorite is the alto.
Alto. Okay.
I won those awards on tenor and soprano because Dr. Hesse made me play the ride book because I could improvise pretty good. Yeah. But I really love the alto.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Wow. So you did that, and then where did you go from there?
I taught a couple of years, and I had heard there was a band with Stax Records called the River City Street Band that was looking for a saxophone player, and I found out that they were coming through Texarkana. Mm-hmm. So I got in touch with one of the guys I knew in the band, and I said, hey, is that job still open? He said, yeah. I said, well, how can I audition for it? He said, well, we're coming through Texarkana, let me talk to the manager. So they called me back and said, we're playing here this night. If you'll be at this location at this time, we'll audition you. And so I went to this little club between Texarkana and Ashdown, Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And I was there, I brought my saxophone, and I brought the tenor again. I didn't bring my alto. And they played a few songs, and I sat in with them, and we got through, and they said, okay, get your stuff. Yeah. We're gonna put you on the road with us. Yeah. Yeah. So I spent a year on the road with them, traveling everywhere. And then the road life was kind of hard with the rock band. You know, we'd play one night in Austin, Texas, spend the night in the van going to Memphis, and I would wake up in the van just in time to unload the truck and get ready to play the next afternoon for a showcase in Memphis. It was awakening. Yeah. So I did that, and then I decided that just wasn't the greatest life in the world. Yeah. So I auditioned for the Air Force and got a spot in the 8th Air Force Jazz Band as the ride tenor player. Mm-hmm. But I stayed with that long enough until the lead alto player got transferred, and that's when I moved over and started playing lead alto all the time.
Did you have to be in the Air Force to be in the band?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so you were back in the service then?
I was
huh?
back in the service.
Okay.
So, you know, I had spent 6 years in the Army National Guard,
Yeah.
and now I'm in the Air Force band.
Mhm.
So I did that until I got out.
Mhm.
I did my term.
Yeah.
I got out, and my mother was having some health issues, so I moved back to El Dorado.
Okay.
And I stayed around there and took care of them a little bit. And Jerry Lowell, his son, Chris, who is a fabulous musician, he's really good, he called me in El Dorado and said, "We need a road man for the company." I said, "Really?" He said, "I do." I said, "Well," he said, "we got a band. We play 5 nights a week." And I said, "You know what? That sounds really good. It's not too far from El Dorado."
Yeah.
So I moved to Texarkana, and I worked for Jerry Lovell and his son for 3 years.
Yeah.
We put a band together called State Line Avenue, which is a street
Yeah.
right through the
Yeah.
middle of town, and we had some incredible success. It was a jazz / pop / rock band, but you know we had a tune that made Billboard, which was
Yeah.
quite a big deal back then.
It is, yeah.
We had a lot of good luck, and we played for probably 14 years, a long time, off and on. And then when I worked with Jerry, as long as I wanted to, I went back to education, took a job teaching in East Texas, of course, and I kept playing the whole time. I omitted to say this, but during all this time, I was in the National Guard band. Because when I got out of the Air Force, I went to the 106th Army Band in Little Rock, which meets every month.
Yeah.
And I played the lead alto part for a long time. And while I was there, I also transferred to the Air National Guard in Dallas. When I taught school in Paris, Texas, I was the lead alto player and the director of the 531st Air Force Guard Band, which was a great band. We traveled in South America in the summers, did tours for the government, ambassador type tours where we would go and play and support ambassadors. It was really, really, really cool. I liked it a lot.
You lived out of a suitcase for a long time. You probably never had to buy any of those little shine rags or soap. You probably had
The hotel, piles and piles of it everywhere.
A traveling man.
You know, I still hadn't got that far, but I still have soap in the closet from when I was on the road with the Glen Miller Band, because I would just get pounds and pounds of everything that the hotel had. Oh my goodness, that stuff, you know, it lasts forever, because every night we'd go to a new hotel.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, wow.
You know, I think I always had jazz bands in my high school. My jazz band at Paris High School won the TCU Jazz Festival out in Dallas, and we also opened up for Wayne Newton, which was a really cool deal. I got to meet him and spend time with him. It was fabulous. Really gentleman.
I saw him one time. You know, he was part of a bill of 3 or 4 people, and when he came on, people would just go, "Oh, Wayne Newton." His show was incredible. He had us up on our feet.
Yeah.
He was by far the best on the bill, and I would not have thought that. But
such a great entertainer.
Oh my goodness, incredible!
Yeah, our high school kids just fell in love with him and his show. And the nice thing about his shows that we went to was he had young people that he would feature.
Yeah,
And just incredible young people. It's phenomenal.
yeah.
You know, if I go back a little bit, trying to cover everything, I spent a lot of time with Dr. Hesse playing at a place in Hot Springs called the Vapors.
Yeah. Ooh.
I spent a lot of time playing there. We played with great people.
That's an impressive thing to have on your resume.
Oh yes, played with Phyllis Diller, Barbara Eden.
Wow.
I played with Conway Twitty,
Yeah.
another country guy. It's just amazing all the people that Dr. Hesse, you know, Dr. Hesse's a member of the Hall of Fame too.
Yeah.
And you know, he is the one that put the world at my hands.
Yeah.
He really opened the doors for me and put me on a path that if you were lucky enough to study with Earl Hesse, it was really hard to fail, because he knew everything, because he had already lived all the good, the bad, and the ugly. So he could really guide us probably is the reason that I chose to do education and music instead of just music, because his mentorship was really honest and truthful. He's probably the second most influential person in my life, my dad being the first. Dr. Hesse, besides the fact that we favor each other, we talk about that all the time, he didn't just teach me, he was my mentor. He was like a father figure to me. It really changed my life. It headed me in a direction that would be really difficult to fail if you followed his instructions.
And I'm guessing that probably informed you and set an example for you as you were working with your students, perhaps.
You know, Dr. Hesse was a very aggressive teacher.
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you, we got cussed out on a regular basis. Not just a little bit. It was hardcore. But, you know, I liked it.
Yeah.
I really did. I liked it, and I loved him for everything he was doing. He just would not accept anything less than whatever your best was.
Yeah.
And so when I started teaching, I just did the same thing he did to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, the funny thing is young people are capable of about 25 to 30 times more than they think they are and that you think they are.
Yeah.
And so when I finally did get to the college level, like at UAM, where we built the incredible jazz program, we built that program with kids, most of them, some from Texas, but most from South Arkansas. You know, I remember we went up and did a joint concert with another university, and the director says, "Man, you got a bunch of ringers. What you did, you went out and recruited all these great players." And in my whole sax section was from, you know, 3 of them were from Warren, Arkansas. But, you know, once you take a student and you convince them that they can believe in themselves, it's unbelievable what they can attain.
You know, I could not help but see a parallel between your career and what you accomplished and what an athletic coach can do. Those that are successful, maybe they go to a place that is not high on the list of famous places, but they mold it into something, and they go out and they get kids here, there, maybe people with potential that maybe only they can see, and then suddenly they go through, and year after year they churn out this incredible program in the world of sports. And it looks like you did something similar in the world of music and education, and that I think is fascinating to me. So I'd like to hear more about what you did.
I'm going to go ahead and just jump to Monticello.
Sure.
Where we built the jazz program. When I got to Monticello, I was very excited to be there. Number one, because South Arkansas is my home.
Yeah.
And the bands in South Arkansas are okay, but back in the 60s and 70s, they were really incredible. Really incredible. And so they slipped a little bit. And when I got to go back to Arkansas, I thought, this is my chance to give back and really get something great going in South Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so when I started, I decided to look around at all the universities and see what everybody had. Well, everybody had a great concert band. All the bands in Arkansas at the university level pretty much have a great concert band.
Yeah.
And all the bands in Arkansas, every single one of them just about, has a really good marching band. But as I looked around, and no offense to anybody, but there just really weren't any really monstrous jazz bands.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what? Instead of, I'll have a good concert band, a good marching band, but I'm going to see if I can't specialize in my true love, music and jazz, because I see a void, and I think we can fill it. And so I started that journey, and I started recruiting kids and teaching them, and it came along pretty good. And you know, I could play pretty good, to be honest. But you know, at some point when you're sitting there trying to teach a student to do something really great, if you're really honest with yourself, you'll reach a point where you realize, you know what, I really need more to share and teach with these students. So I started reaching out to people that were on a totally different level than me. So I won't mention too many names, but I reached out to some very famous people, and I ended up getting blessed by hooking up with the world-class musician Eddie Daniels.
Yeah.
So actually, when I reached out to him, I got his wife first, and she's a doll, and I got the phone, I talked to her, and she said, well, can you tell me what you want? And I told her, I said, well, I'm a teacher in East Arkansas, and I want to build a jazz program, and I've got a good jazz program, but I want it to be great. And to be honest with you, I don't really have enough knowledge of what I need to do to share with these kids and get them where they need to be. And what I would like to do is if Mr. Daniels would accept me as a student, I'll come out there and spend time with him, and whatever he teaches me, I will bring back and implement with my jazz program.
You became a student.
I became a student of Eddie Daniels.
Wow.
And that was life-changing.
Big.
You know, Dr. Hesse had built the foundation, and I had moved along about as much as I could myself. And Eddie Daniels, his wife told me, she said, okay, tomorrow at 1 o'clock, call this number. I said, well, yes, ma'am, bye. That was it. And so the next day at 1 o'clock, I called that number, and hello, this is Eddie. And we started talking, and I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, man, that's awesome. He said, when can you come out? And so I started making trips to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh my goodness.
And taking week-long lessons with Eddie Daniels. And so he lives on the side of a mountain, I'm not going to say where. He's a very private man,
Yeah.
he's in a private place.
Yeah.
But a hotel within a mile of his house. And I would spend the week in the hotel at night, and I'd spend my days, like a day, with Eddie in his house, in his studio, taking my lessons.
Amazing.
And you know, he is such a genius. You know, he's a great flute player.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Grammy winner clarinet
Yeah,
player.
yeah.
And then he's a phenomenal sax player. He used to play with Mel Lewis, Thad Jones, Mel Lewis big band. And he has 2 big baby grand pianos in his house. And you would think that when you do your lessons, he'd pick his horns and up. He does do a little bit, but mostly he plays everything on the piano because he can do every tune in the real book on his piano in every key.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never experienced that with anybody, anywhere, ever. He was amazing, and he was nice, but very hardcore.
Wow.
His lessons were very, very intense.
Wow, that.
And you know what? To make a long story short, I did that for several years. Our jazz band got better
Yeah.
and better and better. And my playing got better and better and better. And I was playing really all I could possibly want to. I was playing gigs all over the place.
Yeah.
He had just opened another world to me. And so one summer camp, I started all these jazz camps, all band camps at our college there. So once we got the jazz program going, we had 2 good jazz bands at that time. And I started a jazz degree. So at UAM, our first degree was a Bachelor of Arts in Music with an emphasis in jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did that. And then I started getting my friend, Mike Williams from the Count Basie Band. We were in the Army National Guard Band together. He used to come down every summer and do camps with us. And then he started bringing more people of that level down. And being surrounded by those kind of musicians, for me, our staff, and our students, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And so one year, it was the 3rd year he'd come down for camp, and he said, you told me you wanted to go on the road with a big band. I said, I would like to. I said, you know, I've been in the Air Force band, I've done this, but I've always wanted to play with a famous big band. He said, well, don't tell anybody I told you this, but there's got to be an opening in the Glenn Miller Band because I see those guys all the time. And he said, here's the guy's number, give him a call. And so I called this guy named Bart Delaney, who was the manager of the Glenn Miller Orchestra, which a lot of people don't realize. Since 1954, when they regrouped, up until the COVID pandemic, they never got off the road. So I called this guy and I said, Mike Williams told me to call. He said, okay. He said, well, I need you to send tapes for this. And so I put everything together and I sent it all out. And lots of people sent in their audition stuff. And it got to the top 25 and he called me and he said, just want to let you know you made the top 25. We'll keep you posted. And then he called me back again and said, we're down to 10, you're still in there, we'll let you know. And you know, I hate to say this, but you know, it pays to know a few people.
Oh, sure.
And so they're on the highway, Glenn Miller Band's coming this way, the Count Basie Band's coming this way, and they end up at the same hotel. Bart Delaney knows Mike Williams real well. He walks over to Mike Williams and says, I need to get some help here. He said, what can I do for you? He said, I got these 10 saxophone players. Can you look through this sheet and just see if you know any of these guys that you think would do us a good job? And he picked up the papers and he said, Gary Meggs, that's your guy. You want this is who you want. And they called me that night and offered me the job.
Oh my goodness.
And a month later, I was on the road. The college gave me a year off and let me tour with the band. And I toured all over the world. Just, I mean, literally all over the world. 230 concerts in a year. But I did have to spend a year on a bus. At least we stayed in hotels, so every day we were on a bus going somewhere different. But it was the time of my life, and that was another turning point. Because once I spent a year with the Glenn Miller Band and I came back to UAM, guess what I expected my jazz band to sound like?
Yeah. Wow.
So the level went up again.
Yeah, I can imagine the kind of experience you got from that would just be.
Do you mind if I take a break?
No, please go ahead. Yeah, please, yeah.
And so when I got back after that year, my expectations had grown a lot.
Yeah.
And so I took that top jazz band and we got serious. For the first time in my life, I decided that there was no reason that these 18 to 24-year-old guys couldn't be on a professional level. There was absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
And I sold them on it too.
Yeah.
So we started going to big jazz festivals, and we started winning, and ended up going to the first bit where we won the Louisiana Jazz Festival, which was at Northwestern at the time. And that was a pretty big festival because we beat all those Louisiana bands, which was kind of nice. And then we started going to Chicago, to Elmhurst. And the third time we went, we finally got selected as Outstanding Band. But by that time, I had added a master's in jazz studies at UAM. And you know, these programs, the bachelor's program and the master's program, I had to write those programs, have them accredited within ASM on the national level, so we have full accreditation. And so as we did that, the jazz program grew from 2 jazz bands to 4 jazz bands, and 2 or 3 combos, and life was different after that.
What's it like recruiting young people, and is there an abundance of supply there, or?
There is an abundance of supply for people to train.
Yeah.
You know, jazz, it's sad to me, but you know, jazz is America's only really art language formed and built here.
It's true.
And in music education today, it's not all about jazz. It's not much about jazz.
Yeah.
Luckily, when I came back to UAM and I started pushing it so hard, now most of the other colleges have been forced into it, because if they don't, then all the kids are just going to come to us.
Mm-hmm.
So they've started trying to make their jazz programs better and emphasize that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The high schools have gotten more jazz programs. I don't want to try to take credit for something we didn't do, but what we did at the University of Arkansas at Monticello changed the culture of the thought of jazz in a big area.
Believe you, I've seen it. I've heard it. I've heard it with these ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim Wood is one of your alumni.
Tim Wood. Oh, he is the first natural gifted genius musician that I had at the college level.
There's a connection that I'm making that I had not realized about it was 2 or 3 years ago after Tim was playing one place, probably at the Afterthought.
Probably.
I walked up to him and I said, Tim, that was great. And just something compelled me to say it. I said, you know, I hear a lot of musicians, but when I hear you, you get better. You consistently get better. You know, and I thought later, like, what compelled me to say that? But it was truth. And I'm not, you know, I turn on the radio. I barely know how to dial in a station anymore. I can't read music. I can't play an instrument. But I could sense this, and I knew nothing of his connection with you or even UAM. It's like, you know, this gentleman is going after it. You know, he's working on getting better. You know, and I see where that came from now. You know.
Well, I'll take a little credit, but he's really gifted, and his work ethic is. No one has a better work ethic than Tim
It
Willis.
shows, you know.
He's really.
Yeah, I mean, to a layman, you know, I can pick up on that.
And he's a fine person too.
Yeah, I mean,
He
that's
really is.
amazing.
You know, there's another guy in Arkansas that I had years ago. I spent 1 year at UAM, which is just a 1 year assignment back in '89 and '90, and Rodney Block
Oh, yeah.
was my drum major, and playing the ride trumpet in my jazz band.
Okay, yeah, I saw him Friday night at Wildwood.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I love Rodney. He's a great person.
Yeah, he's incredible. Yeah. Okay, well, that's amazing.
It really is.
Wow, yeah, and I've heard sometimes young people who want to go into music being concerned about compromising their artistry for commercial reasons or whatever, but I kind of wonder, like, what are the career choices that someone faces, and to what extent have you given advice or you know?
I think
what
that's a great question. You know, music is you don't want to be a musician for a living unless you just can't live without it.
Yeah.
Because it is, and even in education, because it's such a demanding. I mean, I'm 66 years old, and I still have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't get to stop.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to direct a band and keep my up here going, I have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
You never get to take a break. It's not, you know, it's not like, I like to compare it to I have a lot of people in my family that are athletically inclined, which is great. But you know, if you're a football player, it's seasonal.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to stay in shape off season, but it's seasonal. So if you're I'll just use high school for instance. If you're a student athlete and you play football, so you know from August to November, if you're lucky, maybe longer, that's your season.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a musician, you start in August, and when football season's over, concert season, all region, solo and ensemble, all state. And then after that, as soon as that finishes, it's concert season, and you put the jazz band on there too. So they have a never-ending work. It's fun, it's great, and you love it. But if you're not a person that's willing to do that, like for a life, then you probably don't need to do that. It's a commitment, and it's not very forgiving.
Have you ever put your toe in the water of composing?
I have. My compositions are all small group oriented. Back in, I told you we had a hit on Billboard back in the 70s. Me and another guy named David Carpenter wrote that song. It's called I Need to Know. It was just a ballad with a flute solo in the background, but it was pretty good. And then I wrote a lot of songs after that. I'm actually a BMI artist. I register all my things and get royalties occasionally. I did a lot of Christian tunes with a band back in the early 2000s. And then I actually did a lot of recording in the last 10 years. You know, a lot of people would say, kind of selling out a little bit, but the market for a bebop jazz or big band jazz market right now is not that great.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that's just an incredible guitarist, that lives in Texarkana, Texas. He owns a studio. He and I have done a lot of composing together, and we do sort of a jazz fusion type thing. It's not smooth jazz because it's a little too edgy for that.
Oh, good.
But you know, we had several hits off of that the last 3 years.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, our Christmas tune, "Hark the Dancing Angel" on smooth jazz. I hate to say smooth jazz, but it's what it was. Was number 4 internationally. Yeah, it did really well. It was a huge hit. So my advice to a person that wants to be a musician is you're going to have to do whatever it takes to make a living.
Yeah.
If you make it big, it's awesome, it's wonderful, and it'll be great. If you don't make it big, you still have to make a living. One of the advices that I give a lot of my students, and I have a lot of them that took this advice, if you really want to play and there's nothing else you want to do and you want to have a family and you want to have benefits, look at the military option.
Yeah.
I have a lot of students that have ended up in the Air Force band, the Navy band, the Army bands. I have a lot of students right now that are in National Guard bands. They're supplementing their income or getting their income by being in the military. My college roommate, CESQ, I'm sure you've heard of Claude. He spent 25 years in the Airman Note. Retired, lives in Hot Springs Village. And he's set.
Oh, yeah.
He's just set. He still plays, but he doesn't have to, and he's got all those benefits. So I think if a person really loves to play and they don't make it big pretty quick, then they should look at that. And if you go the education route, I don't mind telling you, I love education, but education has supported my musical habit my entire life.
Yeah.
It really has.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to worry about where my next meal comes. And those are things that a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but a lot of musicians have had a rough time.
Yeah.
Great musicians.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't get the break or you get a little luck along the way, there are thousands of unknown great musicians all over this world. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
But I've been super blessed.
Yeah.
I've been really had.
Well, kind of nearing the end of the interview, but tell us what's going on with you now. What's happening and all that.
I'm still teaching in Monticello. I just retired as the director of bands.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that anymore. Actually, my wife is going to be the new director of bands, Megg. She's a saxophone player too.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm going to teach some saxophones, mentor some students, and I'm going to ramp up my playing now that I'm at a point in my life. I'm going to follow my mentor, Earl Hesse, who's in his mid-80s, and he's still, you know, he's had several surgeries for his hands and things because, you know, just like an athlete, you play long enough, things happen. I've already had one surgery on this wrist because of playing so much. I'm going to play and mentor young people as long as I can, and try to get more people involved and in love with jazz music.
Yeah. Are you optimistic about the future of jazz?
I am.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is, I think we're in the slim years right now, to be honest. But we've never lost a base of people that love it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing we can say is there has never not been a base of people that love jazz, big band music, that kind of thing. They're still there. And I think it's going to take a little more time, but everything goes around in circles, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And just like the big band era, you know, it slowed down and it comes back and it slows down, the pendulum swings. Rock and roll music does the same thing, classical music does the thing. I think we'll see a point where big band and jazz music comes back up, it hits a good peak again. Okay. I think it'll be eternal.
Okay. Well, that's inspiring. We appreciate you, and I'm just delighted to have this chance to present the award and to get to know you better. And the message you have for us, I think, is one that resonates. It's encouraging and it's inspiring, and we appreciate it.
No, thank you for this wonderful honor.